Okay, good evening, Dr. K. This is my second attempt to record my outline discussion. I did it using the Canvas recorder, so 12 minutes of discussion were just lost in space. It just said error and wiped it out, so I'm going to try to record it on my computer and upload it. Okay, so just I did a quick summary of all three chapters, and I also attempted the quizzes at the end of each chapter. I really like how the textbook is set up to really help explain the test. It's evident that the book was written by people who have experience with these tests because I really like the caution and don't forget boxes throughout the chapters. And I kind of took, in my outline, I kind of highlighted those caution or don't forgets that really stood out to me. Okay, so chapter one really talked about the test, the overview of the WJ4. It first went over the history of evolution, so started in 77 with the WJ, in 2001 with the WJ3, and then now the current one we have, which is WJ4, consists of three parts: cognitive ability, achievement, and oral language. The major changes in the WJ4, new tests and clusters, so expanded to 20 tests from 14. It used to be 14 with the WJ3, now it's 20, with new tests like oral reading, reading recall, and word reading fluency, excuse me. New clusters were added, excuse me, like reading fluency, mathematics, and academic knowledge, and simplified evaluation, easier ability slash achievement comparison, and academic knowledge comparisons. The theoretical foundation um, sample, well, it was tested with over 7,000 people, 7,416 people, ages 2 to 95 plus, and represent a diverse U.S. population. And that really impacted the reliability. The score is designed to have very high reliability, 0.80 for or higher for the test, 0.90 for clusters, a really high reliability. And then it's a versatile tool in terms of the purpose and use. It's used in education, clinical settings, and research. And it's used to evaluate achievement levels, identify strengths and weaknesses, diagnose learning disabilities. Um, Intra-ability variations. It helps identify cognitive and achievement discrepancies to guide program planning and accommodations. Really, really big takeaway is it's really useful for helping building plans and accommodations for those who take the test. Conclusion. All right. The key resources use the WJ4 Examiner's Manual for details of instruction and guidance. The don't forget and caution. So one each. The don't forget that stood out to me was WJ4 can help in diagnosing disabilities, evaluating growth, and planning educational programs. Very, very useful inside the school. Caution. Be familiar with the test before use. Ensure proper training. Understand the applications limitations of the scores to avoid misuse. I think that's very, very, very important. That was a big don't forget. In terms of the quizzes, okay, so for chapter one, question number one, what is the primary purpose of the WJ4 test for achievement? I selected B, to measure the individual's achievement across various domains, including reading, writing, and mathematics. Which of the following is not one of the four clusters in the test of WJ4? And I selected mathematics cluster. Um, Number three, um, WJ4 tests for achievement is used to measure achievement in individuals across what age range? I selected 3 to 80. And which test of the WJ4 is considered the core test? I selected passage comprehension. And number five, what is the primary caution when administering WJ4 tests for achievement? I selected C, results should not be interpreted without considering the examinee's background and behavior during the tests. Okay, not sure if I got 100% on those, but that was my best shot at chapter one quiz using the text, trying to find the answer. Okay, chapter two. Chapter two is about administration. In summary, um, it's a comprehension achievement test used to assess academic skills. Chapter two focuses on administration of the tests, including procedures, scoring guidelines, and common examiner errors. Very important. It had really good flags for errors, and it gave you some really key takeaways. The overview of administration: tests must be given according to specific guidelines. Some tests are timed, others require response booklet, and some may involve audio recordings. The standard battery test must be administered first, followed by the extended battery if applicable. Each test has specific basal and ceiling rules, and administrators must use must ensure that they are followed precisely. They really come back to the Bayesian and ceiling rules, and they have to be followed precisely. Caution. My biggest takeaways for caution were for test 9, 10, 11, and 12. Test 9, sentence reading fluency. Do not administer this test to someone who cannot read. A non-reader can still score, but it won't accurately reflect their ability to read, their reading ability. Test 10, math facts fluency. If the examinee scores 3 or fewer correct on after 1 minute, discontinue the test and record their score after 1 minute. This test is about speed and accuracy, so early finishers who do well get higher scores. Test 11 caution was sentence writing fluency. If the examinee scores 0 on sample B through D, discontinue the test. And test 12, reading recall. Do not tell the examinee any words on the test. Follow the continuation instructions after sets of 2 stories. And the don't forgets that stood out, I got 4 of those. One was ensure you do not read words aloud to the examinee unless specified. Number 2 was keep track of the exact finishing times for tests like word reading fluency to ensure early finishers are rewarded for their speed. Number 3, Bayesian and ceiling. Rules must be followed meticulously to ensure scoring consistency. And the 4th one, for spelling and sounds, do not repeat mispronunciations, simply note them for instructional insights. Chapter 2 quiz, doing okay on time? Chapter 2 quiz. WJ4 test for achievement includes tests for which domains of assessment. I selected C, broad academic achievement. Number 2, which test in the WJ4 is most likely to assess the examinee's ability to recognize letter patterns in words? I selected A, letter word identification. Number 3, what is the primary caution to consider when scoring writing samples? I selected C, responses must be evaluated according to the rating scale, not just correctness. And number 4, which of the following best describes the process of calculating raw scores in the WJ4? I selected A, you add the total number of correct responses plus any items below the Basel. Number 5, which of the following is a primary goal when interpreting results from the WJ4? I selected B, making decisions about intervention, placement, and further assessment. Okay, that was my shot at Chapter 2 quiz. Jumping over to Chapter 3 in terms of the summary. So Chapter 3 of the WJ4 test for achievement focuses on procedures for scoring and interpreting the results of the various tests included in the WJ4 battery. It includes detailed step-by-step instructions for calculating raw scores, obtaining estimate age and grade equivalents, and using the online scoring program to generate derived scores. So Chapter 3 emphasizes accuracy in scoring, highlights common errors to avoid, and provides specific guidelines for each individual test, ensuring a reliable assessment of the examinee's ability. So for the caution and don't forget, the key parts that stood out to me. Caution, I have 6 of them, and then don't forget, I have 4 of them. So for the caution, don't forget to accurately handle Basel items. Items below the Basel should be included in the raw score. The second one was don't include sample items. Ensure sample items are not counted in raw scores. The third one was watch out for clerical errors. Simple math errors failing to include all correct responses or incorrect transfer of data can affect your score accuracy. The 4th one, use the appropriate block for writing samples. The most appropriate block of items for writing samples should be used. Even more blocks are administered. And the 5th one was the caution that stood out to me was continuity in tests. Tests like oral reading and reading recall require specific instructions for when to stop or continue based on the number of points earned. The don't forgets that stood out, I got 4 of those. Sorry, I only had 5 of the cautions. I have 4 of the don't forgets. The first one is always record the correct responses first, then add Basel items. The second one was in tests like sentence reading fluency, enter both the number of correct and incorrect responses. Number 3, use the online scoring program. This program helps reduce clerical errors, includes additional features such as derived scores and qualitative reports. And the final one, the 4th one, miscalculations. Watch out for tests that have multiple point options like writing samples or multiple subtests like reading vocabulary, which require special attention. My attempt at the Chapter 3 quiz. Number 1 asked, All derived scores may be calculated manually or by using the online scoring program. That's false. Number two, indicate incorrect responses with an X. That's also false. That's what I found to be false. Number three, for which test are items not administered below the basal um, for which test are items not administered below the basal included in the raw score? The answer was calculation and word attack, A and C. Do not include sample items in the raw score. That's true. Number five, which test has subtests that must be added together to obtain estimate age and grade equivalence? I found that to be reading vocabulary. Number six, on writing samples, how would you record the score of 20.5? I chose 20 instead of 30 because it says you should round to the nearest even value. It's 0.5, so it could have went either direction. I said 20 instead of 30. Number seven, on an oral reading test, ignoring punctuation is counted as an error. I found that to be true. Number eight, you can read any words the examiner requests on the word reading fluency. That's false. Number nine, you can only obtain cluster scores using the scoring program. That's true. And number 10, finally, which test requires entry of both the number correct and the number incorrect to obtain the derived score? And that is the sentence reading fluency. These are what I felt that I found the correct answers inside the chapters. I'm approaching 12 minutes. So my reflection, really, it looks like this is, WJ4 is a very strong test. It really gives you strong results. They worked really hard to get a very diverse population in the sample. They're very meticulous about the rules, especially involving basal and ceiling. They really tell you to use the examiner's guide. They give you really detailed instructions on how to administer the tests, how to score the test, and I think having the online system helps reduce human error. And my biggest takeaway is that it can be used, really to help build those plans and accommodations, and it can be used in education or in a clinical setting. So I can really appreciate how much work went into creating this test, the background of it, how to administer it, how to grade it. Really excited that it really gives you the best results to really help children or adults, excuse me. But in my professional milieu is really involving children, and I'm really excited that to really really dig deep into the test, its background, how it's administered, how it's scored. So I really enjoyed these chapters. I like how the textbook is created, and again, it's really evident that it was authored by people who have real experience with the test. So that's my summary. I do have a printed outline if you'd like to see it, Dr. K. I just thought I'd do a discussion to just add some voice and context to it. Thank you.